Hello and welcome to Cool Coffee with Kansas Principals. By and for school administrators, this podcast is intended to promote candid discussion and insight about our great profession. My name is Rick Sola, and as Communications Director for the Kansas Principals Association, I am the host, but I am certainly not the feature. Sit back, take a sip, and enjoy. This is Cool Coffee with Kansas Principals. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to another edition of Cool Coffee with Kansas Principals. Today, I am joined by Miss Jenny Steele, Manchester Park Elementary Principal, home of the Timberwolves and USD 233 in Olathe, Kansas. Welcome, Jenny.
Hello, Rick.
How's it going? How was your Friday? This is a Friday that we're recording. It's a Friday in the springtime. How'd it go today?
Well, it's a Friday in, mid-April, so it's good,
So I'll just start with a little bit of full disclosure. Oftentimes, principals, I'm meeting often for the first time after some email conversation, but Jenny and I go way back to like 2011 when I was a brand new administrator and Jenny was my counterpart assistant principal at Prairie Trail Middle School. So, we'll stay professional and, task at hand here, but we do go back a little bit. Mm-hmm. So it's good to see you again. And I actually was going to bring up, so I will just throw this out there. Jenny and I are both big Seinfeld fans. Mm-hmm. And so we always had fun with a little bit of just kind of a banter back and forth and even still through text messaging. But I was actually going to bring up in a little bit, but I'll do it now since I'm there. Back in October, and we did a principal perspective blitz through this KPA podcast. You submitted a perspective called "Is This a Sitcom?" Mm-hmm. Which I will put in the show notes for people to easily find. But I loved it because there's oftentimes it does feel like it can be a sitcom with what we do. I was wondering if you've had any sitcom moments in recent memory.
Well, yes, actually, and it's stuff that you're not sure anybody would write. So I'm probably not going to share those here. Keep in mind, we had our middle school days together. Now I'm in an elementary, and so I have some of the zany things that we had in middle school, but they have an elementary flavor to them now. But I'm still caught off guard sometimes by a few of them. Yeah.
Yeah, and today it was a Friday and we had a pep assembly, and actually it was a really good spring Friday. We had quite a few subs in the building, which we anticipate this time of year, but holding it together. But Jenny, before we kind of get on, because I'm interested in hearing about or learning more, and for you to share about the Spanish Immersion program at Manchester Park, but want to hear your road to the chair. You're currently in the chair of Manchester Park as principal, but what led you to that chair that you're in today?
Right. Well, actually, when I started in education, my goal was elementary, and that's where I started. Shortly after I started teaching, an opportunity came up in middle school, and I was asked to go there. And frankly, I went there, and I didn't think I belonged there initially, and I thought, this is nuts, man. And then after about 2 weeks, I really fell in love with middle school, and I was there for, as a couple of decades. But then, a few years ago, was approached about coming out to Manchester Park, and I think it's partly because it's the largest elementary in the Olathe district, so we have like 18 kids out there, and so I'm kind of used to a large population, and Rick, plus it's also back in that attendance area where you and I met, which was at Prairie Trail. So I was familiar with the community and, really had a home there. Loved the middle schools I'd been at. But so that's how I ended up at Manchester. And it's been, it's been a great, at this stage in my career, it's been a tremendous rejuvenation of my brain. I think because sometimes you do something for a long time and you feel a little bit like you're on autopilot. And so when an opportunity comes along where you have to stretch yourself a little bit, which is what I did, there was a lot of new learning. It has been an outstanding opportunity, and I truly love it now. I absolutely do.
It's interesting that you said when you started at the middle school, you felt like you didn't belong. And I don't know that I ever shared this with you. The person that hired both of us, Dr. Yurkovich, who now, I guess in some ways, is kind of our boss all over again in a different way as board president. And I only shared this with her like within the last year, but I don't know how to say the whole first year, but that first year as assistant principal, I really wondered if I made a huge mistake on why did I leave the classroom and what I was doing I enjoyed, and now I'm like fish out of water. And so to hear you say that kind of like didn't belong, like I really wonder if that's a very common feeling that a lot of us when we move into administration feel. But you don't publicize that. That's not something you talk about. But yeah, interesting to hear you say that.
Right. I think absolutely that stretch to administration. When you're a teacher, you feel like it's kind of, if you have that calling, you feel like it's a natural progression, and you think, I have my skills down, and I think I kind of got it together, and I can do that because I've watched others. And you have no idea what's coming to you until you're in that chair and in that position, and you have to make those put out the little fires and continue to go, and the next one comes at you. Some days are like that, and that just takes a lot of experience and practice. And you're right, we had a great mentor when we were both learning those roles, and I'm grateful for that, because I really have. I learned a lot when I was at Prairie Trail, and that's helped me, continue down this road.
I don't even know if I want to say that. You have a huge elementary school, and you're actually a decent amount bigger than the middle school that I'm currently at.
Yeah.
That, and I know that your building is the biggest, and there's a lot of growth out there. That part of Lenexa technically, but Olathe School District, and so. But it's interesting. The reason why I thought this would be really great to have you on is Manchester Park in a district of, what do we have, 36 elementary schools. You're one of two that have a Spanish immersion program, and you are now. I think your oldest kids are now fifth graders.
They're fourth graders. They're going to be fifth graders next year in the program.
So I guess, there's kind of a lot to the program, but I guess start us off with, I guess at its inception, this program that started with your current fourth graders as kindergartners, just a little bit of history to the Spanish immersion at Manchester.
Well, when I came aboard at Manchester, the Spanish immersion kids were going into first grade, so I wasn't there for the opening of the program, and so I really can't speak directly to its opening. I know that our world language coordinator in the district, Mike Flinthrope, he's the heart of it. He truly is. He has a tremendous passion for this program and world language and world culture in general, and he is truly the driving force behind it. I would not be able to lead that program in my building without him, because he has such tremendous insight. But as we've continued to grow, it's interesting in a building, because it is a new program. The families involved are all very excited about it. It's we have a waiting list every year, but there are growing pains, as with any program, and this is still really kind of a new program, because it's, like I said, that they're just going into next year will be the first year that will be K-5, but there are some growing pains. But overall, it's tremendously successful.
What have been some of those challenges that you've worked through, and maybe your first year principal, really a big program, an undertaking, where we're at in the district. But what were some of those challenges that really presented themselves that maybe you feel like, yeah, we had them, we addressed them, and we've gotten past them?
Well, I will say staffing is a bit of a challenge, and I think that was not probably recognized at the program's inception, because these kids they're half and half. They have a teacher who speaks English, and they have a teacher who's fluent in Spanish, and primarily the Spanish speaking teacher, they're native Spanish speakers, and those aren't always really easy to find. We've actually, the past 3 years, have worked with KSDE on their visiting teacher program, where they bring teachers from different countries to come over for a certain amount of time to teach specifically in that program. And that brings challenges, because sometimes these individuals come over and I'm not sure, I mean, they're given a ton of information from the state and from the district and of course at the building level, but that's a big transition, and I think that it's tough. I think it's a little tough for them to make, and some find maybe this isn't quite for me because they're leaving their families in another country to come over, and so that's a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that. You mentioned the the students in class, and you have the English teacher and a Spanish teacher. Is there kind of a percentage guideline that does it change over the course of their first grade, second grade, that so much is in English in the class versus Spanish, or what does that look like?
Okay, so in every grade level, so starting in kindergarten, the students are, say we start out with 44 kids, we'll say, okay, 42, it depends, from year to year, but they're split into two groups. And those groups, they have half of their instruction in English and half of their instruction in Spanish. And then they flip, change classrooms, halfway through the day. So all of their English language arts, of course, is in English. Their math and social studies and science, that's in Spanish. Then as, when they start in kindergarten, it's a lot of songs and movement and things like that, just, to get things rolling and to keep up with their busy little bodies and keep them engaged. As they continue to go through, and then they start with some Spanish language arts as well. But I will tell you, it's pretty amazing to see that their instruction is in Spanish. I mean, it's not just a little bit of a little bit of Spanish. Those teachers are using Spanish the entire time, and it's phenomenal to watch. It really is.
Wow. For the students that are in the class, I guess I'm kind of jumping to an assumption that they are English speaking at home, and when they go home, do you get a sense, or you get any feedback from parents that they're trying to also incorporate Spanish at home, or is it really just, for the most part, they're at school and they go through the half and half, and then at home they're
Well, it's we are a lot of dual language programs, say, where it's Spanish and English. Often they're created because we have Spanish speakers that are learning English, and that's a way to get them more involved in the academic content. This is really the reverse. Our students are all, for the most part, they're all English speakers, and they're learning Spanish. Now, most definitely, we have students who they do have Spanish spoken in the home, and so they come in with some Spanish, and so in those homes they, then they're home and they're speaking a lot of Spanish. But the majority of ours are English speakers, and there's English spoken in the home. Parents tell me that yeah, they utilize it at home. The kids come home and they talk about it, and they'll talk in Spanish, but primarily in the home they're speaking English.
Okay. You mentioned 44, 42, 44. What does that translate in as far as sections? You know, you have your second grade right now. Is it just one classroom, or are there two classrooms? Or?
No, they're two classrooms. So, like I said, they're divided up. Say if you take in, say we start with, 42, then that means in each group they have 21. And they are, two separate classrooms, and the kids, like, they switch during the day. So the teachers don't switch, the kids do. And that's the right way to do it, because the Spanish room is completely engulfed in, culture and Spanish content. And so that's a better way to do it, because that way they're really kind of immersed with that within the physical environment, not just within the teaching portion of it.
I'm curious what that application process looks like. I mean, it sounds like there's some years where you have to make decisions, and that could be challenging.
You mean for the students coming in?
Yeah, you said there's so many spots per year.
So here's it's a lottery system. And so students, families, there's an application thing where they just sign up for the lottery. And a student there are no certain qualifications, okay, for ability or, how much Spanish they know, anything like that. It's truly a lottery. And we wait until after kindergarten enrollment is over before we close that lottery, because sometimes there are some families who come in for kindergarten enrollment and they're not aware of the program. So we certainly want to give everybody the opportunity to put their names in the lottery. I think ours closes next week, and it is, I'll tell you, they are true to that lottery system. I say that because there's no favoritism played in there. We've had district staff members that say, hey, can you get my kid into this program and that kind of stuff. And they don't budge. They really, I appreciate that about it, because it really maintains the integrity of the program. And when we say it's a lottery, it is a lottery. The only exception to that is if a student is chosen to be in the lottery, then their younger siblings, if they choose to, are automatically a part of the program.
I guess that's probably the best way, but maybe the only way to do it, because lottery, it's fair. It's got to be accessible. I'm thinking of this in terms of, like, I'm at the middle school, but we have our different levels of math and that sort of thing. Are there qualifications to stay, or is it really? I mean, this is the program they're in, no matter what grade they're in, just like we would any other school. They're going to second grade, and it just happens to be, now that you're in the immersion program, are there qualifications that they need to maintain?
No, there are no qualifications, like no particular performance criteria that they have to meet in order to stay in the program. We have students, because keep in mind they start in kindergarten, and we may have some students that even are identified to need some additional support as in, for their academics as they, go through the grades. And those are provided. So we, there's no performance criteria. Now, we do have some that, as they go through the grades, sometimes the numbers go down a little bit. Okay, so like that 42 or whatever we started, we won't have 42 of them in fifth grade, is what I'm saying. People move. Or some decide, some families, not very many though, some make the determination that maybe this isn't right for their child, the transitions or the dual language just isn't the right thing for their child, and they may take their child out of the program. Honestly, that's very few. Sure. I'll be honest. They normally really stay in that. It's a hard decision for them to make, particularly after they've been in it for a few years, because those students, like, they stay together. It's this cohort, and so right. They kind of have their own little family feel, and the families get to know each other, And so it's a really tough decision for a family to make, to say, I'm not sure this is right for my child any longer. So
Those spots wouldn't be filled at that
no,
point. You're in the program.
they're not filled. Like, you can't come in and join in first grade, and I'll have some families that move in, and they know that we're a Spanish immersion building, and say they're enrolling their second grader, and they say, I want my child to be a part of that, and that's not an option. The only exception to that is if a student is moving to us from a dual language Spanish immersion program in another district. I don't make that decision, but Mike Flinthorpe does, because and they can't just put it down to say, yeah, we've had that. My kid, has been in that program. It looks into, and he researches the program that, they're coming from, to make sure that it's the right thing for their child, because the last thing we want to do is to put a child in that program and they're not successful, because the academics it's not all about learning Spanish. There's an academic piece. We have an obligation to make certain that the students are performing and staying up with their peers in the content of math primarily.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because it's easy just to focus on and think of kind of singularly, like we're just learning the language, but you're learning content. You've got core subjects, and you've got a curriculum to maintain, and you happen to be learning it in two different languages. But certainly that's a big piece. Do you notice anything with assessment scores or anything at all with
Well,
this?
I'm glad you asked, because we've been, as Kansas assessments for math and language arts don't start until third grade. And so when we got our scores back this year from, like last year's third graders, we were looking at those pretty closely, because we wanted to make sure that they were staying up. And they are. They're keeping up with their peers, which was, a relief,
Yeah.
and it was a joy, and it was a celebration. But they are. And we have the data to prove it, that they are keeping up with their peers.
That's really great. Yeah, no, that would be. I can imagine a little bit of maybe nerves as you are about to open that email or that packet of scores that we're getting and you're hoping for. So, yeah, no, excellent. This time next year, and I'm sure the thinking about it is already occurring, but this time next year, you're on the cusp of passing on your first cohort to the middle school. Being at the middle school, now I'm not the receiving school here, but
Right.
being at the middle school, I can imagine there's got to be quite a bit of planning and thinking through of that. I'm sure it's still being built, but what is that going to look like?
Well, at this time, and we've been in some conversations lately about that, frankly, because we do have a group that's getting, closer to middle school, and what's that going to look like, and as you can imagine, some middle school teachers have had a little anxiety about it, thinking, what are we going to do with these kids? That how can we meet that need? So when they get to middle school, it looks different, much different than in elementary. And this is the plan at the moment. And I know things can change. So, and I'm not the one to make those decisions. Keep that in mind. But at this time, the plan is when the first cohort, when they go to middle school, and you're right, it's just 2 middle schools, the feeders for, our 2 buildings. In 6th grade, they will have a higher level Spanish class as one of their electives. Their core classes, all their other classes, they're back in with all their peers, and so it's they're not getting that core content instruction in Spanish. So they have a higher level Spanish class. It's still in development, by the way, and that's in 6th grade, and then in 7th and 8th, it will continue. It will be a higher level Spanish class.
Okay. Well, I'm going to hold you to everything you're saying here, and nothing better change as a result
Well, I hope
of
nobody
this.
ever does that, but okay.
No, I've been kind of curious, and certainly, it's awesome the history of this many years in now. But yeah, that transition, and I know I have all the confidence, all the people you've mentioned, including yourself. It's going to be great. It's just so many things to think through, and not there. I always think about or I worry about the unintended consequences. We can make decisions, but then what then results as a part of those decisions. And so, no, very interesting, and just really cool, and very unique. And a district as large as Olathe, just one of two schools participating in this right now, and to be a part of that's really really pretty special. Are there any area, do you have any sister schools that you kind of stay connected with as I didn't know if there's any connection that that's been through it before, that as a mentor, if you will.
So, not really me personally. I know that a great deal of research and visits with other schools who have been trying this from around the country. Actually, I know they were involved and a part of creating the program here. I know I personally went to a conference with some district folks a couple of years ago. And interestingly enough, one of the schools we went to, they had a dual language Spanish immersion program in an elementary school. And it wasn't intended, that's not what the conference was about. That's not why I was there. But I was able to spend time with that principal, who's phenomenal. And so we were able to talk through, some of it. They've had theirs going a little longer than us, but it was a great opportunity for me to sit down and talk with her about, okay, these are some of the challenges maybe, and that I've had, and it's, even we're in two different parts of the country, and she had some of the same. And so I was able to ask her a lot of questions about how did you work through that, and she was still working through some of it, and so we were able to really bounce ideas back and forth. Although I was pretty new to it, she'd been doing it longer. I think we both really kind of got quite a bit out of that collaboration piece, and that was a tremendous opportunity for me.
You started this at the top of this show, if you will. You talk about the growth and the stretching in new ways. Well, I mean, my goodness, this is, aside from transitioning to a different level from the middle school after several years at the middle school, but going to an elementary school with such a unique, really neat, but unique program too. So there's a lot to take on there right at the outset. But no, that's all really good, and appreciate you sharing that. Before we wrap up, we mentioned our shared mentor, who I know had a tremendous impact on both of us. And whether it was her or maybe some of the other leaders that you've worked with through your career, have you received any advice that you just feel like, wow, that's it stuck with you, it kind of resonated with you, that we could put on the air here?
Well, and I think I may have even said this in my little snippet of the podcast earlier. Honestly, it was my dad. I think about this all the time. And because my dad, many years ago, was a superintendent in the state of Kansas in a smaller district. But he told me at one time, he says, Jenny, you're on any given day, there's going to be at least one person in your building that's going through a personal crisis. And you have to be compassionate, and you have to understand and offer the support for them as human beings, but you also have a job to do. And that's to lead a school and to take care of all the kids there. And Rick, I think about that quote, or that piece of advice every single day that I'm at work, because you know how things come at you, and somebody's got this and they have this, and there are often times, I hate to say it, but there are often times that you're feeling a little worn down. You're like, oh man, I can't think about that right now. And I know you got a problem, but we're going to have to put that to the side. And I really, I remember that comment from my dad from years ago, and it stuck with me. And so that really, that kind of gives me the motivation to make sure I'm listening, and that I'm actively listening, not just kind of hearing what they're saying, but really taking it in and trying to figure out how best to work through those situations with folks.
Yeah, I love the compassionate focus on that, because you said we still have the job to do, and that's the hard. I've just discovered that repeatedly, and maybe unfortunately, but any given school year, there's really hard things that come up, and there's really challenging situations, whether it's through the school or personal or whatever. The reality is the job doesn't stop, the building doesn't stop, and it's ultimately our responsibility to make sure that we are still fulfilling our not just obligations, but expectations, responsibilities, and helping to put the best place, or put our school in the best place moving forward. And sometimes that could be hard, or I always struggle with. I don't want it to come across that I'm being cold to something going on, but based on what you just shared, now we have to do this, or whatever that may be.
Right. And that's hard. And I think also, and I've kind of learned this as I've gotten older, is I think also we have to give ourselves a little bit of grace. And there are times when there's so much coming at you, and you find yourself maybe responding in a tone that may not be the best for the whole situation, and trying to remember that tone you just gave somebody, that's what they're going to hang on to. Yeah. And that's not what I want them to hang on to, and they're not recognizing that I'm kind of worn out, and I've got this other stuff going on that's really a big deal, Right. And the other one isn't. And so to give yourself a little grace to where you have to kind of take a minute, even if it's closing your door for 7 minutes, just to kind of breathe a bit. Maybe sometimes it's going out and getting yourself a Sonic drink just to get some fresh air, so you can come back and get your brain back together to meet the needs that everybody's relying on you to do.
Yeah, that pause button was one that stuck with me years ago, and it's valuable. And sometimes we need it. And that Sonic drink, it is, it's a good, for me, it's Quick Trip. It's right down the road. And if I need to go make a run just to, clear your head and come back more refreshed or whatever. But no, that's fantastic. Okay, 2 more things before we go. You, first of all, thank you for your contribution to this podcast, but KPA, and truly what it's intended for, which is principals across the state to hear from and learn from. And the sitcom perspective you did back in October, but you, what has the KPA meant to you as you participated the last several years?
Well, here's what I will say, and I mean this wholeheartedly. I'm a small town girl, okay? I'm up here in Johnson County, I know, and I love it up here. I love it, and I'm in this big district that I has given me tremendous opportunities. I mean, and I truly mean that. But I'm from Pittsburgh, Kansas, okay? I'm from Southeast Kansas. That's where I grew up. I'm a small town kind of person. What I think we often forget up here in this corner of the state is that this little portion of the state is not at all like the rest of the state of Kansas. And I always want to try to keep that ground, that center, that it's not all about the hustle and bustle up here. And I love hearing from administrators from smaller districts. And sometimes I'll get on some like state Zoom things and just to listen. And I love hearing from those folks, because we have the same concerns and issues. They're at different levels, and they're with different communities. But it helps keep me grounded to know that, that somebody in Columbus, Kansas is dealing with the same stuff. They may not have all the resources we do. Okay. Or they may, but it's important to know how people in other demographics and in other communities in Kansas that are much smaller than we are, how they're working through things. Because you know what? There are a lot of really great administrators in the state of Kansas. And sometimes we get shielded from that up here in our corner of the state. And KPA gives me opportunities so I can listen to that, or I can read about it. And that is truly important to me.
I love the answer, because it just resonates exactly how I feel. I grew up in this area, and I've worked my whole career here. Love it. Opportunities, everything that you just said. but the connections I've been able to make through this and the conversations I've been able to have through different parts, through people from different parts of the state, it's there's a comfort, but there's a learning. And you mentioned the hustle and bustle, and sometimes it feels like that hustle and bustle can almost just kind of, we're focused, at the trees rather than like pull back here and look statewide. And truly, I've said it on here before, but that's really the point of this, is just to share the story that's happening in the buildings all across the state, because we have so much in common. And it's really great to hear that. And so I love everything you said, and it really, really resonates. Before we go, Manchester Park, and I'm familiar with that community because the middle school I was at before, I fed right into it. Brag on Manchester Park and all the great things going on, all the great people that are up there.
You know what? Manchester Park is an awesome place, okay? I mean, I know when people hear that we have 615 or whatever kids up there, they're like, oh my gosh, that's huge. But the building was built to accommodate that many students. We're not bursting at the seams. I mean, we're okay. We don't need any more right now. But I'm not, don't get me wrong. But we're doing just fine. Our class sizes are good. I have teachers up there. I have a tremendous mix of experienced teachers and new teachers. I've probably got, I don't know how many there are, maybe 10, 12 that have been there since the building opened. Manchester Park opened the same year Prairie Trail did.
Oh, wow.
And, yeah.
Okay.
So, and I remember that because I remember when we opened, and Manchester opened the same year because they were a feeder. And so that says a lot that you've had, people that have been there 21 years and they're sticking around, and they still are enthusiastic about it. A lot of them bring their own kids up there to have their own families a part of Manchester Park. That means a lot. And for a building who's been open, say 21 years, we've had 3 principals up there. And so that, in my opinion, is a great testament to the community. And that, people want to stay there. Our turnover with teachers is really pretty low. Of course, people move and they want to move on to other opportunities to refresh their brain, just like I did, and I'm all for that. And I support people, and I want to help them be where they want to be. Our kids are, they're awesome kids. We run into glitches every day, like every school in the world. But they have good families. We have a tremendous family support system up there, and I've really tried to embrace that, especially over the past few years, to see what all they can actually bring for us in regard to support for the kids. Today I was up there. We're getting ready for our today we're getting ready for our special showcase, which is next week. We have so many parent volunteers up there. They are decorating that school like you wouldn't believe, getting all the artwork up and getting things together. And those are just people just breaking their backs, man. I mean, I said I couldn't get up and down off the floor that quickly, to do all that stuff. And I'm so grateful that you're here. So that's it really is a great community.
I love the word glitches. I don't know why, and maybe, I don't know that I just haven't applied it to the school setting, but what a great kind of word to, sometimes kids just make glitchy decisions,
That's right, that's right.
And that's where I love that you chose sitcom rather than like drama or tragedy or, something awful. Because it can be very, and truly, I do believe this. And actually, a different mentor early on that I worked with said, if you got to laugh. If you can't laugh, then the job could eat you alive. You got to be able to laugh and find some humor and comedy, and there are some sitcom-y moments. So, well, Jenny, I really appreciate you taking the time at the end of a very long week, and we're just. Several weeks till the end of the school year, but those several weeks feel like about 2 quarters sometimes with all the events and things that are going to be coming up. And
that's true.
It'll all be great. But thanks for sharing about the Spanish immersion at Manchester Park, and good connecting with you, and have a nice long weekend.
Yeah, I hope you have a great weekend, and it's always good to talk with you, Rick. Anytime, Sola. Okay?
Well, all right. We'll see you around.
All right. Bye-bye.
Check the notes section for more information on this episode and to learn more about the KPA and its mission to develop and support all principals through optimized learning, collaborative leadership, networking, and service. Be sure to check back in for our next episode and spread the word about cool coffee with Kansas Principals. Catch you next time.